Good evening, everyone. Sandwich is served out in case the energy has an issue. I said good evening again. Good evening. That's better. The award winners at least should say good evening loudly. So sorry for being the last straw in the camel's back, as they say. Before the awards, they all must be looking at us, where are these guys going to go back? And that too we are discussing diversity and inclusion. Today when you go to B school, everybody talks only on one subject, which is D&I. And sometimes I wonder, and I visit a lot of my clients, there are dashboards on D&I. Now fundamentally, for me at least, whatever is on the dashboard becomes a compliance issue. Now I wonder whether D&I is about compliance or is it about subscription? To me, there are two different human faculties that drive that. Compliance comes from here. Subscription comes from here. Now if organization is not subscribing from here, but complying for the sake of Deming Award or whatever then we are failing the whole D&I in its purpose itself. And then we look at the largest economy in the world and their leaders saying that, hey, come on, DEI is useless. I'm scrapping DEI policies. That's happened in the US of A. And then the organizations which all of us aspire to be or look at them and do benchmarking against, their CEOs stand up and just abolish DEI policies. So my first thought therefore is, was that made for business outcomes purely? Or did you subscribe to the fact and believed that multiple viewpoints synergizing together adds value to organization and its culture? And therefore it's very relevant for some of us to even think today that what is going to be D&I version 2? Is it about compliance? Is it about subscription? Is it about, this is funny, just about 10 days ago, when Indian women's cricket team lost to England by, I think, 4 runs, one of the very senior male cricketer went on the record by saying that instead of wasting money on the women's cricket, we should put that into honing the, the base, grassroots of men's cricket. Now, how deep-rooted are these biases in our psyche? And the same gentleman was yesterday applauding the D&I efforts. The team. So to unravel some of these, I have perhaps the best leaders that we could have gotten from city of Bengaluru to talk about their experiences in D&I. And what do they see as newer horizons of making this D&I a part of a culture? Culture to me is the way you do things in organization, home, business. And in organizational context, culture is always top-down. So what are some of the new things that we are seeing happening around? And therefore my first question is going to be to Sukanya, because she's doing some beautiful work in Wipro. And I've noted some few questions, so with your permission, I'm going to use my WhatsApp messages where I had put these questions. First of all, in your opinion, Sukanya, what challenges hinder a genuine renewal or even implementation of inclusive practices, and how can you overcome those?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And maybe I'll go back to how you referred to, the dissonance between the head and the heart, and one, kind of going for compliance and the other one going in for subscription. If you're going to follow inclusion for the numbers, and if it's going to be more of pink washing or whitewashing that we're doing, it's definitely going to look like a compliance aspect. But if it's going to be done with the ethos of, doing it because of the right thing to do, because there's no two ways about the fact that the diversity does improve the outcome. So diversity of thought, and it needn't be measured just in terms of numbers. You will have to look at it with various lenses. So while I may not completely disagree that a dashboard isn't a great idea, but I think a dashboard often acts as a mirror, so I think it's important to have one to show you where you stand. So if that's the purpose, then, so be it. Mostly what organizations struggle with is, when you kind of run DEI as an agenda, it's more of an observation-based activity rather than, something that's imbibed in the culture. So one is that. So how do you kind of bring it into your culture framework is an important aspect to make sure that DEI is imbibed across the organization. It can't be observation-based. It will have to be imbibed in behaviors, and that's where the whole unconscious bias aspect comes in, so that gets addressed only when behaviors change. So it's deeply rooted. It is important for the psychological safety of the employees of the organization. I think it is also deeply connected to engagement. Leadership sponsor or having executive sponsors, of course, helps because when you walk the talk and when you see the leaders kind of act the way they do, also in the cricket example like you gave, I think there is a message that goes out. So those are some of the aspects I would say that you need to cater to bring in effective inclusion strategies.
Thank you. Amit, you lead a very large workforce. I'm sure people come from very grassroots into the kind of industry that you run. But your product outcome, which is your product, is used by the who's who in the world. Now, in this huge journey of the cycle itself, how important, therefore, is leadership commitment to ensure that D&I agenda gets implemented in its real spirit while not forgetting the business outcomes?
So, just for the purpose of everybody over here, not sure how many of you know Gokaldas Expos. Anybody who's aware of the company? A handful. So we are a manufacturing company into apparel and fashion, and we employ almost about 50,000 people across the globe. And we have, if you measure diversity by gender, we have about 84% women. If we measure diversity by regions, so we have people from, though we are predominantly in Karnataka and around, plus scattered in some other parts, but our workforce is pretty much mirrors what India is all about, different parts of India. And why I said that, Sanjay, is because this is possible only because of the fact that the leadership intent around what we are really doing. It's very critical, when you are driving a particular agenda, without having a very clear buy-in at a leadership level, things will not work down the path. The biggest challenge which I've seen, is actually when we are hiring people, and we are hiring people across all strata of society, right from the people who are from villages, who are earning 20,000 rupees, or coming from farming background, to people at the senior most levels. We have a bigger challenge, which is the society, where our people come from. The fact that we may talk about whatever, but generally our society has created a kind of gender roles. This is to be done by men, this is to be done by women. Parenting, in the families happen accordingly. I'm not sure how many of you would have noticed, but generally, at least I have noticed it whenever I go to anybody's place, if there's a guest at home, it's the daughter of the house who's supporting the mother in serving the guest rather than the son of the house. Or if there's something to be done, to buy something from the market, they'll predominantly prefer a son to go out and buy it. So when we are hiring people who come from that kind of a society, and you have your middle management, supervisory levels, who are, grown in that kind of thought process, the leadership commitments plays a very, very critical role, because without that, if you just leave it to them, the gender roles will automatically come to their minds, and they will look at people in that sense of, whether this person will do it or not do it, or this is how things have always been. And hence, when we look at hiring, when we look at our policies, when we look at creating our ecosystem, when we look at ensuring that we have the right safety mechanisms for people, all that is coming in because of the fact that there's an extremely high commitment towards ensuring that we give representation to that section of society. And this is not just about gender, it's about multiple aspects. So for us, D&I is not just about gender. It's also about, as I said, India's own geographical and cultural diversity. So that's what we are really looking at it, and that's how that commitment is making us drive things, what we are doing.
Thank you. Now, if the policies, agenda is on the place, Sunil, I wanted to ask you, what kind of metrics do you use to find out the effectiveness of what leadership thought it should be the D&I agenda?
Again, Sanjay, I think metric is always, it's a two-edged sword. Too much of metric also kills as you said, it becomes more and more compliance. And if it is less, the challenge always is that, okay, then there's no way to measure it. So what we have done in Alvarez and Marsal is that we measure across 3 areas. When we attract talent, there's a measurement to it. And then when we actually develop a talent, there is a measurement. And then there is a measurement on how do we retain. So that's where we try to bring in the whole, so we call it as inclusive diversity framework. And we don't treat D and I separate, but as one. And that's where we actually start to measure it. And other thing is also is that for us, it's more of a business strategy than a HR strategy. So that's how we have implemented it, because if it comes from business, then usually the buy-in is much more. And if you have a metric, the measurement, and also making sure that people are adhering to it is much better in that way. So that's how we have done. And but again, it's always a struggle that we don't make it compliance versus make it more just a measurement to see that the effectiveness of the program. So that's how we look at it.
Sanjay, if I were to add to it, and generally we look at it D&I, and then we start looking at the matrices around percentages and all of that stuff. What I have realized that instead of, if you reverse the metric and you put I&D, put inclusion metrics, diversity automatically follows. So, sometimes we tend to focus on the metrics which is more on the other side because that's easier to measure. But in that ease, we actually miss the real point. The real point is our inclusion, because when the inclusion is happening, the diversity would automatically prosper in that place.
Thank you for making that point, because as I say, diversity is being invited for the party, and inclusion is being invited on the floor to dance. Now, every discussion in every forum today has to have AI. Therefore, we will also not miss AI. And I'm going to ask Satheesh you, are there AI algorithms today that can help us identify gaps in diversity and create more inclusive environments?
No, absolutely. I think even before I get into that, I'll probably start with where Amit stopped. Right. I think it's so important, and we were actually practicing this, Amit, what point that you mentioned about, right? I think inclusion is actually the starting point. I think the advantage for an organization like us, unlike many of them here, I think we are a small company, about 2,000 people. So I think it gives us a lot of opportunity to start building some of this very early on. We're about 7.5-year-old company. And I think our focus has been less about measuring what's the diversity hiring. We actually don't measure it at all, right? So it's also about giving equal opportunity. What we look at is, hey, on top of the funnel, are we able to bring equal amount of people, right, on diverse background? I think that's one of the ways to measure this. Secondly, from an inclusion point, we actually, measure all the things in terms of, is the voice of everybody heard in the room, is diverse views encouraged in the company. So both through, so we have a chief listening officer, which is an AI solution, actually listens to all employees across the org on an ongoing basis. While we don't fully depend on an AI solution, there is also connects that our partners do. Combination of this actually brings a lot of insights for us in terms of, are there some red zone, are there some amber zones in terms of understanding these practices not being followed, right? So I think that's one of the ways that we have been able to, build an inclusive culture. Now, on your question about biases, so I think there are AI models if it's trained well. As all of us know, if it's trained well, I think it'll actually can eliminate biases. But if you're not trained well, this model itself could turn to be unbiased, right? It could turn to be biased, right? So I think that's how AI will help. So what we are using, for example, we use a AI system for our interview process to all of that. So there is one place that we look at the biases. Like I said, there is a regular, measurement mechanisms that run across the company on an ongoing basis instead of annual surveys to all of that, which actually gives us a lot of insights. I'll probably give a small anecdote and a story about recently that I heard from two of our employees. We all have this compliance part of compulsion of boards and others asking us to send our people for training. Actually, two of our women leaders, I've sent them as part of this compulsion for a training. They came back and said, hey, why you actually send us for this program? And I said, hey, this is part of building an inclusive culture to, you are understanding this concept well so that you're able to come and talk to your other colleagues at office. They said, hey, the 3 hour of conversation was about, how should women be passively aggressive in the room, right? They said, at no point in this org, being here for 2 years, I think we had that feeling we need to be one, right? So I think building that culture and building inclusiveness, what it lead to is, we actually closely looked at the employee referrals by, for example, if I take just women as a diversity, one of the angle to it, actually being significantly higher than probably even the men, referrals. As a result, in an org like engineering, where typically companies struggle to have high diversity, we have about 30% of engineers who are women, right? So we didn't target for it, but it's an outcome of driving an inclusive culture.
I think for us, responsible AI is a very important thing because as we see the workforce of the future, we'll have a lot of human plus technology, especially the agents coming in and all. And especially in the GCC world, we will see more and more of that. Now, how do you ensure that these agents are inclusive? I don't have an answer, but I think we all have to think about it. And if humans have bias, I'm sure agents will also have bias. Finally, they are getting trained on some data. And you can actually create bias by design, or you can actually make sure that that bias is not there. There has to be some framework, some kind of checks and controls in place that the bias is not by design introduced into the agents and all, which is going to be part of the future workforce. I'm sure that a lot of us are already have them as part of the workforce, but in future it is going to be more and more prominent. So inclusion and diversity will evolve, and also it will mean it will be in a very different format than what we see right now. So I think that's a question for all of us to think in the future how we have to look into it.
Thank you. Sukanya, you lead this large DNA agenda. Are there some unique best practices that Wipro follows which are in a public domain you're allowed to say?
Yeah, of course, a lot of it. Thank you for the question. And I would say I'm very lucky that, I'm in an organization where, right from the chairman and the CEO, there is strong belief on inclusion being a part of the agenda. In fact, inclusion is not a separate function. It is built into the culture framework. And when I would describe Wipro's culture as creating like a butterfly effect, right? So every action has a ripple effect that impacts employees across the organization. So you will have to be driven by purpose and, what brings together by actions of employees. if I were to just look at a few best practices, I would say that executive sponsorship. So one is the leadership commitment to, what you are signing up for. Second is not really be driven by targets. Try and build your inclusion agenda based on, what is the right thing to do. And your so for example, if you were to look at an inclusion for employees with disability, right, it would also mean to create an ecosystem to enable them, right? Is your organization ready for that? What does it mean to build that across the organization? Or when we talk about LGBTQIA inclusion, right, is it only just pinkwashing, or are your policies allowing employees to be able to express themselves as who they are, right? But all of this on the baseline, at least what we've always followed, is that you will not take a decision based on an employee's association to an underrepresented group. You will always take a decision based on merit, right? And I would say that that held us very strong in the US context, because we didn't have to go out in public and say that, I'm not going to do this anymore, because merit was always the underlying fact. So I'm not a strong proponent of tying all of this to, like leadership KPIs, because that's when, things can be done just to make the KPI look green. I would say that follow it because of the right thing to do. And also when you look at diversity, it is important to look at it in multiple facets, which means that you also need to start looking at diversity that is not seen. So be it neurodiversity or, the need for caregivers. So it is an ever evolving journey. You have to keep listening to the employee engagement surveys, or what is it that's concerning, so that you're able to garner that and build that connect for the employees. So right now, I would say we are pivoting more towards belonging. So I would say that DEI can still, you can still have metrics around measure, but if you want to really address the human need for connection, I think belonging is a different ballgame altogether, right? Because then that can't be measured just by metrics alone. Yeah, so that's in a nutshell, I would say, some of the practices that are followed.
Amit, looking forward, how do you see DNI or inclusive practices helping organizational success?
So fundamentally, the belief is that when you have employees who are feeling included, and that's when the engagement will always be higher. And when the engagement is higher, ultimately, what is engagement? If you really look at it, people are actually doing more than what they're asked to do. And hence, the entire piece around, additional discretionary effort when people make when there is a better policies, or when there is more inclusion, is what they feel, and they feel that there are no biases, or there is no no one to kind of run them down or kind of dismiss their thoughts, and that's when things improve. So if we really look at it, when in our organization, largely we have, since we hire people, as I said, across gender as well as across different regions of the country, we have hostels for them where people stay. In those hostels, we have people, especially when we hire people from different states, we have people who are welfare officers who are in those hostels who speak that language, and so that they can kind of connect with them, and we can understand if there is any concern which is which they are having, and which we can very quickly address. That ultimately helps us in terms of their engagement, their well-being, mitigating issues well in time, and also ensuring that they feel a sense of belongingness even though they are away from where they are. Today we were actually in the morning, there was a team coming from one of the northeastern states, and we were talking about it, how we can have that set of employees coming to our organization. Similarly, whether it's each of our factories for women workforce, you have women doctors available on call at each of our factories at any point in time, just to ensure that their well-being gets taken care of. You get ensure that you have more nutritious food, because we realize that when people are coming in the morning, a lot of them were even not having breakfast, and they used to wait till lunch. And then a simple thing of ensuring that there's a nutritious breakfast ensures that they are well taken care of. At the same time, it helps in terms of their efficiencies and output. So predominantly, Sanjay, if you look at it, everything has a very clear business imperative in terms of whatever we do. Sometimes people think that all this is cost, But if people don't realize that this is very minor cost compared to the kind of benefit which organizations get whenever they are following more inclusive policies. And I'll again repeat that, please don't do it because of any compliance, please don't do it for dashboards, focus on inclusion, and you will automatically start seeing the business results coming in and people appreciating, and they want to kind of work more and kind of refer more people. And somebody mentioned about employee referrals. That's exactly how it happens. More and more people. A happy employee would always refer more people, and that itself is a good benchmark of whether you are really being inclusive. If there's a particular group who's referring more people, it shows they are really feeling equally cared for in the organizations.
Thank you. Any emerging trends you guys are seeing?
Again, Sanjay, just to add to what Amit was saying is that I come from strategy consulting background, and one of the stereotypes we have is that you have to be tough. You can't be vulnerable. I think these are some of the things. So, and there is another cliche said, be yourself. And both of them do not go hand in hand. So if you have seen after the semi-final win of the World Cup, Jemima Rodriguez actually showed the vulnerable side of herself. And that doesn't happen too often in the corporate world. And that's very important. So if you can really be in the corporate setup vulnerable, at the same time you can actually deliver stuff, and that's what Jemima did. She was vulnerable, she had mental issues, she has anxiety, but we all know what she delivered. So I think that's a very important aspect what in the workplace, like be yourself is a cliche, but let's make it happen. I think that's a very, very important thing. That's what I wanted to add to Amit's point.
Yeah, I think I'll probably just add on to what Sanjay was saying, right? So the whole, you can hear, right? Yeah. So the whole effort actually goes in from our side is to really drive that, like I said earlier, about driving the inclusive culture. So without even talking so much about D&I, what we actually do, all our measurement mechanisms, so at leadership level, at all people manager level, there are specific areas of question actually we drive through our engagement surveys and through the AI chatbot, which keep going and asking them whenever people on certain milestones. There is very specific questions around inclusion that we ask. I think that's been giving us a lot of patterns and trends about what a specific micro-learning intervention needed to drive certain behavioral changes in pockets of the organization, right? Because we have operation workforce, engineering workforce, different segment of talent. And I think for each of the segment, what intervention means is very different. I think we've been able to do specific intervention at pockets of the organization, and that's been actually helping us big way.
Thank you so much. We have a couple of minutes left, and I'm very happy to take a couple of questions. Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much once again, and thank you to all of you for being patient listeners.